from April 2nd.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And we have a new public hearing for 373 Crescent Street. And while he's setting up, I will read it into the record. Under the Wetland Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40 of Mass General Law is amended. On the West Bridgewater bylaw, rules and regulations, the West Bridgewater Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on April 16th in the Brown McDonald Conference Room, 65 North Main Street, for notice of intent and stormwater management plan filed by Michael Koskinen Associates on behalf of Stephen Salisbury for septic repair, restoration of filled wetlands, and general site improvements at 373 Crescent Street. And we're open.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael Koska. I'm a registered engineer in land surveying in Commonwealth, Massachusetts. Here representing Crescent Street Limited Liability Corporation. The locus is at 373 Crescent Street in West Bridgewater. The LLC is 25 Sandy Pond Circle in East Bridgewater, Mass. I was retained by the current owners to initiate an existing and proposed conditions plan on things that they would like to do to take a site that has been disturbed previously and used as a contractor's yard and try to bring it back to something that employs some stormwater management and shows overall what the applicants would like to do. The first sheet of the plan is the existing conditions plan. The wetlands start here with wetland flag A1 and run along this green line all the way around to A65. The edge of the BVW was delineated by Environmental Consulting and Restoration, LLC, on September 14, 2018. The site presently has a building here that is mostly used as an office space. There is a building here that is being used for truck parking and equipment and so forth. This existing building here is a shell of a building where there's no, there's the steel that's up that supports it, the columns and the beams, but there's hardly any sheathing on it. So that's something that they would like to improve. We have in orange here a 25-foot buffer zone line, 50-foot. Yellow is the 100-foot discretionary buffer zone. This here is the FEMA flood zone line as scaled from the FEMA maps. It is a Zone X, or it is the line of the 500-year event, which has a 0.2% chance in any given year to flood to that elevation. The 100-year flood event does not show up on the floodplain maps on this site. Let's see, the topography, there's a hill right here, or a stockpile actually, of reprocessed material and other materials that when the applicants or the new owners were trying to get the site back to some kind of order, either this hill was there or they stockpiled all the materials there. There was a brush pile at the time of the survey in this area. The topography in the northwest corner is about 88.7 at the tree line. There's a 92 here, a 91. And basically everything kind of goes toward either the wetland to the east or in this rear area, the wetland to the north. This site is fairly level, not much pitch at all. Most of the site is reprocessed gravel. There is concrete around these buildings here. There's parking in the front here, and the new owners would like to change that. The area is serviced by town water. There's a gas line in the back here, and it's on-site septic systems. There are some berms that were tried to be created here. They need some shaping and so forth, but the material is there. It just needs to be shaped and then loamed and seeded where, we're kind of getting into the growing season presently. The locus is on assessors map 37, lot 1 and 2. It's got a total area of 583,402 square feet, of which 368,787 is upland, and that's simply just following the wetland line to the property line here. Wetland in that parcel is 214,615 square feet. So again, this is West Street here with the abutters on West Street. You come in, there's a, I believe a crescent maybe comes in here, and the entrance is located in this area. There's a small existing garage that is here. Okay, so that's the existing conditions. Gently sloping topography going towards the wetland edge, basically all reprocessed asphalt. Well, what the owners would like to do is, I'm going to start from here, just work my way back if I may. Can everybody see that? Didn't think so. It's either,
You can turn it. Yeah, you can turn it. We've got, yeah.
Boy, it's quite a crowd here tonight. Okay. Let me get done and then we can hammer away at it after that. What the applicants would like to do as far as improvements, and I'm just going to work my way back again, is in this area here they'd like to put up a sign that introduces their area. They want to eliminate the parking places here and screen this whole front from the street. Additionally, what they'd like to do is screen this area with trees, and from this existing garage put a fence across and a gate. The gate for security and fence so that the idea is anybody that's coming up and down this street, Crescent Street, that this is kind of blocked off. There would be these parking places in the front would be rearranged here where we have 12 spaces. And any dumpsters would be put behind the existing garage and would be screened by either a slatted type screen or something that they kind of out of sight, out of mind, so to speak. The arrows are a way of the vehicles coming in. They can come in here, they can go this way, they can go around that way, they can traverse around the site. What I've done is I tried to designate some parking places. This is a site that has a variety of construction vehicles, and I tried to break it up a little bit so that there'd be some kind of order to it. It may be that once things get arranged or certain people, occupy things that, might be a little different, but it wants to be more organized than it was previously. This is designated as a equipment vehicle storage area here for perhaps larger pieces of equipment that can just go out in the morning. There's 12 spaces here, maybe, the employees that utilize that or that would utilize this building here. We have done a perk test and designed a septic system through the Board of Health office for this building here, And the one that's a shell of itself, we've also designed a new septic system there. Previously, the system was in the front here, and this one I'm not quite sure where it was, but I think it went out towards the front. The soils here were very good. The water table was high, however, and so there would be a concrete wall around the two systems to meet breakout requirements as per the Board of Health. We have designated some snow storage areas so that the snow can be pushed up if we get large amounts of snow. We have a proposed contractor's building here of 7,500 square feet with parking out in the front here again so that vehicles can traverse back and forth. An equipment vehicle storage area. It's anticipated that this hill is going to disappear over time, and over time meaning over this year. When they took over the site, they've been gradually moving the material out of there. But in the incidental type of thing that they need, material storage area, we designated one here, another material storage area here, snow storage there. Improvements as far as the Wetland Protection Act is concerned. We're proposing a grass-lined swale to go all the way along this edge with a riprap stone outfall. We would put in check dams as necessary. Generally, you don't need any check dams if the slope is isn't over 2%, which this isn't. But in the event it's in the on the plan, proposed grass-lined swale with check dam, the swale would have a 3-foot wide bottom. It'd be 1 foot deep, and it'd slope at 1%. We have the same setup back here that would capture any of the runoff and deliver it to this splash pad here. And we're proposing a replication / restoration. There was some tree cutting that went on, and we're anticipating that this runoff would feed this constructed wetland, and it would serve two things. One, the plants that would be planted there would grow, but two, it would take out some of the impurities, some silt or anything that perhaps could get out of the swale or out of the riprap area. The erosion control can be either silt fence, hay bales, straw wattles, or a combination of all. I think that this site is going to have a little bit of nurturing, let's call it, as we go along. What I would like to do is, as these different improvements done, that I can get together with the agent. We can make sure it's being done, number one, properly, and we might find better ways of doing things that might be even easier or more effective to serve the needs of the wetlands. We have put around here, this red line is a limit of basically use at this point of the site to give it, the wetlands, some protection. Again, the edge of wetlands is basically the edge of the gravel / reprocessed asphalt in this whole area here. And I guess it's been like that for quite a number of years. And they would like to connect these two buildings with an addition. They'd like to put in a little 40 by 40 addition here, and basically put a fence along this line. If any of the fence that is there is in disrepair, to replace or repair it. And we're here this evening to hear the abutters, to hear the Conservation Commission and the agent, to see what kind of improvements would be necessary to make everybody, hopefully they'll be good neighbors, and we'll make some improvements that'll make life pleasant in this particular area. We are in a water resource protection district according to the map, and as I say, this is, a lot of this is basically the tree line is right along the edge of the wetlands here, and then right back here and back of this berm, it kind of, the wetlands kind of flare out to the north where the tree line is here, and basically it runs down this area here. So all that area within the tree line is basically had some sort of disturbance over the years, and I don't know when this site started, whether it be 30 years ago, 50 years ago, or longer. Maybe the applicants who are here tonight could, or the neighbors might have some history on it. I don't know the history, but we're hoping to make such improvements that will make this site a much environmentally friendly site, and also do things that maybe will take care of some of the neighbors' concerns. So with that, I'm here to see if I can answer any questions.
Okay, before I open it up, John, do you want to give your report? And hopefully that'll answer some of the questions people might have.
Sure. I'll read the report that I provided the commission members so that the public can hear the comments. The issuance of an order of conditions will depend on the commission being satisfied with the design of the site plan. Reviewing this site plan, I've had some concerns that need to be overcome with some revisions. In describing the different areas needing revision, I will describe the northwesterly portion of the site as the recently disturbed portion of the site, and the easterly side of the site was historically disturbed over the years and has been utilized with a number of different uses over those years, and a lot of it wasn't good use, and the current owner of the property has cleaned up along that area. So as to the recently disturbed portion of the site, I'll start there first. The following items need to be addressed. First, the proposed stormwater swale along the northwesterly side of the project will need to be moved outside the 50-foot buffer of the wetland. Second, in revising this particular stormwater swale, the most westerly part of the swale must be extended westerly to the tree line and then southerly to the existing earth berm. Third, this particular stormwater swale must have sediment forebays at various specified intervals as to act as check dams, and the applicant's engineer has mentioned that, but I'm highlighting and underlining the word specified distances. Fourth, the stormwater swale must have a precast outlet structure embedded into both of the wetlands embankments on the wetland side. Fifth, the moving of the stormwater swale out of the 50-foot buffer will require a portion of the material stockpile to be removed and relocated. Six, this particular stormwater swale must be extended easterly to the existing earthen berm, which is easterly of the material stockpile. Seventh, the proposed wetland restoration area needs to be linear along the existing wetland. The width of the linear restoration area is to be 25 feet wide and the length 100 feet, more or less. And the reason for that is to provide the makeup for the wetland area that was disturbed in the recent clearing. Eighth, the wetland restoration area needs to be planned by a wetland scientist, and the plan prepared by the wetland scientist needs to be submitted to the commission for its approval. Ninth, the stormwater swale to be moved outside the 50-foot buffer needs to have that portion of the stormwater swale stay 50 feet away from it. If you follow what I'm saying, so you're going to have a 25-foot linear restoration on the uplands, on the upland side of the wetland line. So that means you're going to have to adjust that 75 feet now in that area. 25 for the restoration, it's now a wetland, and then you have to be 50 more feet to provide for the 50-foot buffer. Just in that area, not throughout.
Right, somewhere in the vicinity of the brush pile that we kind of noted when we went out and did the survey. Okay.
10th, the disturbed 50-foot buffer needs to be restored and planned by a wetland scientist. So you're going to need a restoration of the wetlands, and then the buffer needs to be restored because that was clear cut. And the wetlands scientists will need to use the native buffer types of vegetation that would be westerly of the site that hasn't been disturbed, as a guide as far as the planting. 11th, the existing earthen berm along the wetland needs to be inspected and stabilized with a vegetative cover where needed, and the applicant's engineer mentioned that in his presentation. 12th, the erosion control barriers for this particular stormwater swale needs to be extended accordingly to match up where the swale will run. 13th, the changes to the stormwater swale in the historically disturbed site, which is the easterly part, needs to be revised in a similar way as noted in the third and fourth comments, which is basically the forebays and the outlet structure. 14th, this particular stormwater swale, the one in the historically disturbed area, needs to, where am I here, sorry, it needs to extend northerly and westerly along the base of the earthen berm until it meets the other berm that comes from the recently disturbed area. 15th, the same swale needs to extend southerly to meet with what appears to be a pavement berm to be used for the entrance area. And then 16th, the entrance road needs bituminous berms to direct the water towards the stormwater swale in that area. Lastly, the erosion control barrier for this particular swale needs to be extended southerly to Crescent Street.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Not so far.
All right.
You answered one of mine.
Yeah, one's been answered. Now I'll open up to the audience. Anybody have any questions?
I have one question. It's more curiosity than anything. When my children were kids, a long time ago, there was a pond out there that was filled by these last winter rains. And I was just wondering if you have any idea where it was.
I do not. I didn't I skate.
They skated on it, they fished on it, and they disappeared. That's what happened to us.
If I could address that, looking through the historic files on this, which is a lot of it, the owners back then petitioned, I think it was Cape Dory, petitioned.
No, it wasn't Cape Dory that filled it.
Pardon me?
It was not Cape Dory that filled it.
I know, but Cape Dory had the pond, and I've heard, and I don't know this for a fact, but hearsay was that it was used to test some of their boats. The next owner in petitioned the commission to fill it in and do some extensive wetland draining to the northwest on the site, up near where the old rail bed ran. And it would drain the wetlands behind the houses on West Street in that area. And they received permission to do both. Only one thing was done, which was to fill the pond. They didn't get to the other area. I think they started to remove some of the bed, the old rail bed, but it didn't do the trick to drain the wetland. So it's still a wetland up there. It cannot be altered in the future. So there was a lot of controversy over the approvals, and it eventually went to DEP, and they approved it. And prior to this current owner purchasing the property, the DEP alerted the commission that they were going to do a site walk to issue a certificate of compliance for this site. And I went to the site, and what a mess this site was. And I also was prepared to argue that they shouldn't issue a certificate of compliance because of what was on the site, but also because it didn't appear that the previous owner had really constructed the site according to the plan that was approved. So when I went out there, I realized that, if I might, the original plan had called for all of this to be filled in. And so when I saw where it was and where it was approved to go, I said, I'm not saying a word, because I don't want to fill in that, and I don't think DEP would anyway. But I just kept quiet about that, because at least it didn't get filled like they proposed it, that it was to be filled. And how that got approved by DEP, I can't even imagine. But it's because I think they are not from the area, they're not familiar with the area, and so they probably were left in the dark, let's say, about it, and that's probably why they approved it. So that's the history around the pond.
Okay. I'm kind of interested because this winter, or since last October, my backyard has been flooded. It's just pond.
Where's your...
293 Crescent Street. Well, it doesn't completely abut this, it really doesn't.
So you're within 300 then? Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Yeah.
Is there any anticipated change into the services that the business provides? And a follow-up to that is there any anticipated increase in volume of work, additional trucks, additional work, things like that?
Well, that's good, a fair question. As far as the type of business that's there, Mr. Salisbury has a concrete company. Basically, they get there early because the concrete trucks roll out of the batch plants early, and a lot of his work, I guess, is up towards Boston. So he's in and out of there for the most part early in the morning. Larry, he has a few excavators and heavy equipment for that effect. I think that, Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, you're up towards Boston most of the time. And, sometimes the equipment comes home, sometimes it stays on the job. The ideal thing is to have work where they go, the equipment goes from job to job. But in times of either a lull period, then I would say that equipment would show up here. Type of business, it's basically a contractor's type yard. Additional people that might support, a business like this could be, a landscaper, or perhaps an electrician might want to have a bay, or a plumber, or basically it's contractors. Steve, if you've got anything to add to that, I'd be. I'm sure.
Well, I will say,
The yellow trucks that have been there all these years are leaving.
Yes. Are you from Salisbury?
I'm Steve Salisbury.
Okay.
Yes.
Scott Warren, I live right behind you.
You walk in the dog, right?
Yep.
Nice thing.
Nice thing next.
But yeah, the biggest contributor to the noise and the smell and the disaster that was there before is he's supposed to be out May 1st. That's going to take a little bit longer because he's got a lot of stuff. He's got another yard in Norton, I guess, that the lease is still going. But we had to let him stay for a year as part of our condition. And I'm excited to have him go. I think it'll be much better with him gone.
Yeah.
Because I know.
Will you be renting space to other companies?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully local people from West Bridgewater.
Question, will there be any repair work done or general maintenance
I
on
mean, like
equipment?
on our own equipment?
Yes.
I mean, I drop my stuff off. I'm not a mechanic. He works on some of his stuff, but I mean, this is big stuff, so we don't have mechanics. The guy who's there now, he's got a couple mechanics, but
I'm just wondering, we've had a few other sites where we've had to work on drainage inside the buildings and containment for it, if there's going to be repairs.
I think we
or
have to do that
maintenance.
anyway.
Okay.
The oil and water separation.
Yeah, we have to do all that anyway.
So if I could just expand upon that. They're here this evening to address the wetland protection, and we're trying to make sure that that occurs before it gets approved. They are going to have to go through a site plan approval where all of you will be notified once again to go in and talk about the operation of the site, express your concerns about the business end of it. Again, we're sympathetic about the business effects to you, but the commission only has jurisdiction over how to protect the wetlands. We can't tell them to be out of there by 5 o'clock in the evening or something like that. I mean, that's might be absurd, but things like that. We can't tell them how to operate their business there. As the chairman said, we can tell them to put floor drains in if we think that there might be a spill and those floor drains go into a tight tank and can't be discharged to the wetlands. They have to be pumped out if they tend to have pollution get inside of it.
Yeah, we're doing flow drains everywhere anyway.
Yeah, so those types of things we'd be interested in, but definitely when you get notified about the site plan review, because it's in a water resource protection district, it's also an existing non-conforming use zoning-wise, so all of this has to be heard at a public hearing where you all will be welcome to talk about those things, about the business end of it, because that's what that board will do. And so, again, you can mention it tonight, but we can't do too much about those kind of things, just to let you know.
And we're generally the first step in the process, and we let you pretty much ask the questions now, so they can fix them by the time they get on to the next board that they have to go before. So we kind of let it open so that you guys can get as many of your questions answered.
And just for the butters information, that hearing is scheduled before the planning board on May the 15th, and I believe it's 8 o'clock, and I think that it's in this same room. So you should be getting certified mail from Donna Carter, who's the planning board secretary, and it will be duly advertised in the paper, I believe, twice.
So is the sewerage like you talk about that meeting, or is that this meeting?
The sewerage is the Board of Health, but
Okay.
it's outside the 100-foot buffer, so we can.
That's something I'll talk about later. I mean, our house is right there, so that's why.
The other thing that we will do is for this building here, we contemplated trying to put this building and this building in the same area, but with the gas line here and the plumbing within, it doesn't work that way.
And there's a phone line running down, excuse me, there's a telephone line running
Yeah.
right down here, right?
Over
So they
that
took out
wire.
all the trees, my fence is falling over, this is some other time, right? But
Right. We have a thing, existing fencing to be replaced where necessary to provide screening, so that'll all.
could they move
you
the
know,
phone lines?
Um,
I mean, the electrical thing?
No, there's I think some heavy duty stuff that comes down here and down there. I showed the poles, and that's all something that can be perhaps talk. You have the owners here, make your feelings known, and without any system coming down here, perhaps there's room to put in a screening of trees or something like that, or a fence or a combination thereof. Any smell coming from the front here, we're gonna repair the septic system in this area here. You can see we left it kind of blank. There's some, if my memory serves me right, there's some telephone poles that come out that, we're gonna take a look into that area there. And this building here, which is basically pretty much all office spaces based on, 75 gallons per 1,000 square feet, it's 4,000. And so that would be a system of approximately 300 gallons per day. So just to kind of correlate that to a single-family dwelling, a bedroom goes by 110 gallons per bedroom. So if you have a 3-bedroom home, it's supposed to be 330, 4-bedroom, 440. So it'd be equal in size of about a single-family dwelling.
Thank you.
I have a question. In terms of the commission and all of John's comments, is there anything problematic in anything that he mentioned?
Well, as John was talking, I was kind of going along and thinking of what it would do as far as, some of the ramifications of what I have on paper here. Now, I'm more than happy to take all those comments, kind of do see how they all fit in.
Sure.
Talk to my clients. Any problems? If there's problems, we can incorporate all the
That's all we can ask.
If
Sure.
we see something that they think that they need a certain area for something or the other, and it's integral to the operation and the traffic flow here and so forth, then we'll get together and see if those concerns are legitimate. If they are, well, maybe we can come up with something else. If it has no effect on them, and they say, yeah, do it, then it shall be done.
May I record,
Thank you.
comment? On the extension of the swale going to Crescent Street, there's a drainage there. At heavy rains, it does fill, it gets flooded, and it does it goes over Crescent Street into, I'm on 22 Coppery Circle, so it does go over Crescent Street into my area, if you want to call it, across the street. The pavement currently has been rough. It's coming up, there's potholes. That is all due from a couple of years ago. We had some really heavy rains and freezing. How are we going to address that situation?
On my plan, I show that there is a existing catch basin here with a head wall. The only, most of the work I've done is in the town of Bridgewater. I remember when Al Beninati and Andy Baggis had a crew of 21 people, and then the recession hit. They kind of went down to about 3 or 4. I think if the economy stays strong and more people get employed by the town, or this is kind of, if it's an existing drainage and it goes either across the street or something of that nature, well, it's kind of a town issue. If the road's falling apart, well, it's kind of a town issue.
Right. So my concern is when you extend the swale,
Right.
it's going to create the water flow, which is now going to fill it up even more.
So
A little more, a little faster.
I'll let Michael address the purpose of the swale and what.
Yeah, the purpose of the swale is to capture any of the silt that might come off of the parking lot. Reprocessed asphalt isn't the most pervious in the world. It's somewhat more pervious than just pavement. And so in picking up here, naturally we want to direct it further down. Now all of this is going to take place with, and that's why I suggested earlier about as we go along with this, that we might have to make some certain changes where we might find a low area in the micro topography that it makes sense for it to, put a riprap splash pad before it goes out to the wetland. It might make more sense to put in perhaps some check dams within that swale, which would be just, kind of a rock core to slow things down and to let the silt build up in back of it so that it doesn't, spill over and silt up the wetlands and so forth. So we are obligated to try to keep all our drainage getting away from Crescent Street as opposed to getting it towards Crescent Street. Will it fill up in here if we can get it down further, and perhaps eventually, if it reaches a certain elevation, go through the equalizer pipe that probably runs under that street? Sure. But at least what we're trying to do is take out some of the impurities in it so that we can allow the wetlands to work less so that they can thrive better. So I don't know, John, if you had anything to...
But the other purpose of the swale is to slow down the runoff. If you have even with the, even though it's not all blacktop and it's the reprocessed grindings from pavement, the runoff is going to go quickly into the wetlands if you don't have anything stop it and slow it down before it goes into the wetlands. So having all those swales extended, and it's not going to extend to Crescent Street. It's only going to extend to, can you show where the gate is into?
Here's the gate right here.
So all I wanted to is extend it possibly 25 by that scale, maybe 25 feet more, so it won't come all the way up. And the reason I wanted him to do that is so that as the water runs down their entrance road, it goes right into the swale. Right now, it would bypass it and go off into the wetlands and create some issues.
Mm-hmm.
But if they extend it and it traps it and makes it go to that far end where the blob of green is on that side, that's the control outlet. They're going to be holding back that water for a longer period of time so it's not running immediately into the wetland. So that theoretically, and I say theoretically by all the engineering models, is to give the water in the system time to flow through it at its normal pace instead of deluge pace from these heavy rainfalls that we get. So that's the concept for it, along with treating the effluent as Michael mentioned that.
Now, what about the stockpile area? What kind of material, and what about the runoff?
Seems like that stockpile area is basically reprocessed, would you say, the majority of it? And from what I gather from conversation is it was on the site when you inherited the site. And I think that I heard somewhere that eventually, as time goes on, that hill is coming out of there.
You don't plan on bringing any material back to the site from jobs or anything?
Well, that'll happen here and there, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, but that pile will be used on site, and then if we don't need it, we'll get rid of it when we're done.
What kind of material would you bring back though? If you use
Well, it's usually dirt.
just dirt?
Yeah, it's just dirt.
What about the runoff?
Wasn't that what all the other stuff was all about?
Well, I
have
mean, add into
designated,
effect, it depends on what size, you got a big hill of dirt, it's gonna,
Right.
water's gonna come off.
No, that big hill is not going to be a big hill. We got 1, 2, 3 designated material storage areas. Let's say a guy's got a job and he needs 1,000 yards of stone dust. Well, he probably isn't going to take all that stone dust to the site at once. So he'll have a designated materials area to put it in so that he can utilize it on the job. This isn't the type of place that you have, tailings in one end, from like a gravel operation, tailings, and then you have a pile of stumps, and then you might have a nice pile of gravel or sand. And
What about if you rent it out to like landscapers?
then they would have to
Yeah, that's, no.
have a kind of a.
They're not
I'm
gonna
not
have
turning it
something
down.
Okay.
If I might, I think what leads
Yeah, spend too much money cleaning it up.
leading to is a concern about having a stockpile, let's say a 12-foot high pile of loam,
Right.
and you get a heavy rainfall, and that pile of loam is not protected by any
Yeah.
grassy, stabilized by vegetative surface.
Right.
That could tend to run across the parking lot
Yeah.
towards the wetlands.
Yeah.
And what they will be obligated to do as part of an approval is sign that drainage agreement that says that they are going to maintain their site, and if the swale starts to fill up with sediments from one of those piles, they're going to be obligated to clean it out and reseed it, for example. And if they have to do that, then they're probably going to make their what do you want, tenants.
There'll be no tenants dropping anything off in that, I can guarantee
Oh,
that.
okay.
Well, I'm just like, even if you stick like a silt fence around,
Yeah.
just to
Right.
slow down the
Of course,
the runoff from it.
What can happen is, in one of the buildings could be a storage area of, let's say, 50 hay bales, or, some rolls of straw wattles or silt fence, so that if anything like this comes up, I mean, it would be better for them to be proactive and to catch it than to let it go willy-nilly everywhere and then have a bigger mess on their hand. I think that they will be better stewards of the property than the previous experience. They need to get organized, true, but what comes along as far as tenants or their own operation, I think that, I don't know how many tons of scrap metal and bulldozers and stuff that they hauled out of this site to the scrap yard. But I think that they want to, one, clean up the site, and two, be good neighbors.
And because it's a stormwater approval, they're subject to inspections. So if they're not being proactive in keeping it clean, whoever it is that's going to do the inspections will say, you got to get it cleaned.
Yep.
And they'll
I'll
get
get
a,
you the key to the gate, John.
so,
You just give the people.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? Can you address John's questions by our next meeting? If we continue it, or would you need?
you got to
More
go
than
to
two.
that other one anyway, right?
I gotta go to May 15th, but my clients are, they're anxious to kind of, they've done some things that they weren't privy that they shouldn't be doing, and they want to right that and so forth. So I would like to give it let's call it the college effort to address John's comments, which are appropriate for the board and perhaps for a lot of the stormwater stuff that will be coming up the next meeting if I don't have it taken care of. So what maybe could happen is if I can hit most or all the points by the next meeting, then when I go to the May 15th meeting, hopefully I'll be a little bit ahead of the curve
So our next meeting's the 7th.
of May. So that'd be a week before the 15th, plus or minus. So I guess you guys meet on a Tuesday night.
And they
This
Wednesday.
Tuesday, and the planning board meets on a Wednesday night. A week later.
Yep.
So, yeah, I will try to.
Shoot for the okay. So what I'll do is I'll entertain a motion to continue to the 7th.
I'll make
And
the
if you
motion.
can't, just continue until the next one.
Right, but motion to continue to the 7th.
Right.
Do I have a second? Moved and second, all those in favor? Aye. And what I will tell anybody in the audience, if you can, check the website or call in that day to make sure it's on the agenda still. Because they do have the option to ask for another continuance. And I don't want to have you all come out if they're not actually going to be here to address those concerns.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm prefacing what date you
Right,
wanted,
right.
knowing that the planning board does have one coming up the next week.
Right.
So,
And,
that's the
It
only-
wouldn't be fair for 24 people to show up here and find the doors are locked till 7 o'clock and the meeting starts at 6:30 or something. So, yes, I
Okay.
understand that, and I would give Kitty and John, notice that, geez, I'm making it or I'm not. We'll keep in contact, and
Yeah.
also, all of the 14 or 16 points that John made there, certainly I want to tackle each one of them.
Excellent.
Perfect. Thank you, and thank everybody for coming in.
Thanks,
Hopefully,
everyone.
we've gotten some questions answered for you.
Hopefully it'll shape up and won't be as like it was before.
report?
Yeah, I will.
You're further away, yeah? Yeah, this is the wetland line that was delineated by the law. This is the 25-foot buffer line.
While he's here, do you want
This is
to
the
get
50-foot
a
buffer line.
report on 153?
And this is the.
Figured we might as well.
They have jurisdiction to this.
We can address markers. They will
Their main
address
focus
those.
for
Is
this
that type where they'll have markers in there in case they do have tenants and they do have,
On this one?
yeah. Or is that too big a
Right.
piece of
They're
property?
about 5 foot wide, they're about 1 foot deep, and they're grass.
You know something?
You know,
I
it's
think
not like
we
it's
should
a
just
big
so
deep
that-
gully.
One of the workers doesn't
Yeah.
push beyond.
Just, it's always good to just have someone know.
So they're small.
Good idea.
Yeah, they can't do
Do you have a pen?
it's all, maybe 50 years.
I switched pocketbooks.
Do you have a pen I can borrow for a second? Thank you.
You mean people still use it? I
What
know.
am I supposed to say about 150?
I have no clue. He hasn't paid yet.
Okay, I'll say what I have to say.
We were just going to, while you're here, ask for an update, just so we know what's going on.
I had a proposal with Mr. Milligan, and the proposal was to get an existing conditions plan together, come to the board, see what the board, how intense it was going to be. Once I learned that, well, that was an existing conditions plan. This is going to be a proposed conditions plan, so a proposal goes out. So the proposal went out, so did the bill for the first proposal, and I haven't heard anything. So, Larry was the provider of the fill in that area there, so part of my conversation tonight will be what's going on. I've gotten a phone call from 143, the person to the right, and I guess she got a price to stake the property line, which is basically right at the toe of those two slopes that come down from both properties. And I guess she didn't like that price, so she called me for one, and I called her back and said, look, ma'am, why don't we just see what's going to happen, because maybe it's going to get staked out anyway during the construction phase. But I said in my message to her that it is basically at the toe of the slope, which I went by there yesterday, and with the rain, there's water that accumulated there. And so I doodled up a little plan that I want to meet with Milligan and see what his thoughts are, and then, get on the same page with the abutters, because if there is some fill available and they can make a better looking yard and also fulfill some of
And add more fill?
and direct the water to the rear instead of in that middle section here.
Why don't you take some of the stuff that's been there and do something else with it to make it work right? Yeah, they shouldn't have had it there in the first place.
Here's what the situation is, I think, down there. I didn't do the perk test down there, but if you look at the water tables, you got some decent soils at the 4 or 5 foot separation, which then raises everything. You go around a lot of places now, and you see a house, and it's perched up on a hill, and you got the slopes away from it, but there's usually no houses or, to the sides of it. People that can afford it bring more fill. Builders that want to make a buck, they do the least amount that they can to facilitate with the septic system, and for either a walkout in the back or to slope it off, and whether they got 100 by 100 unusable area, that's just the way it is.
And also buyer beware,
So,
you don't.
if I could add,
Oh,
I actually built that house.
yeah, he's the culprit.
And Joe Cooler built the house next to me. And at the time, Paul Stringham was the building inspector here. I remember him?
Oh, yeah.
While we were doing the project over here, he was down the street with binoculars. We were taking loom off because the loom, my brother built a house in East Bridgewater. So he stopped me because I needed a permit to take loom to my brother's house. Then when the fill was coming in, he stopped me again. And it was just, we just stopped. And you know what I mean? We could have blended them together. We didn't blend them together, but he made it very hard. I don't know if you ever heard the story, but he had to do an inspection on the nails in the roof. So we went up the ladder onto the roof and couldn't get down. That's why we just left what we had and went on with it.
But even still, I mean, the house was, you made it so it was livable. The lot was good enough to do what it was supposed to do. The person who buys it, whatever, buy it beware. You don't just come in and do what you want to do to it. It's because you don't like the way the look of the lot looks with the sloping of everything. You did what you had to do. I'm not saying anything wrong.
No, you were.
That was fine.
Yeah.
It's just this whole process of just bring everything in on the weekend and just do what he wants to make it. Now the neighbors are getting the blunt of what the lady had. They sold the house.
Where if he had hired the engineer at the very beginning,
he
might not have needed as much fill, or he might have been able to slope it different.
I keep telling them.
But the lady didn't sell the house for that reason. I owned that house for 11 years, and for 11 years, there was always something wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But now the new one, people that are there,
Now they're friends, I guess.
They want to know what's going on, though.
Yeah, from what I understand, they've been talking back and forth, and they're trying to come up with their own plan. But unfortunately, nobody's talked to Mike about it.
He should have been raising ducks instead of chickens in the back, and he would have been all set.
At this time, money talks.
Yeah, right.
But no, getting it done right talks. The money. I take the money.
So we're still at the waiting stage and working through it. And
I would have been done by now. I had a little preliminary plan there, and I met with John. We talked about it a
nothing's
little
going to grow
bit.
in that anyway.
But at
can
this
see it every day on
point,
the highway.
I can't go forward until I feel that I've been compensated for my time.
Yep.
So do you have a signed proposal to do the work?
No.
No, okay, so he doesn't even have that. And it's
All I
not
did-
that he didn't try.
I did an existing conditions thing. I'm sure there'll be, that they want to get it resolved in front of this board. And I'm more than anxious to get it over with.
Sure
But
you are.
I'm dependent on Steve to be the voice of the operation. And you can see he's been very,
I
he
mean,
doesn't do a good job when it comes to communication.
I did have a conversation with him last week, and I told him to talk to you. I haven't heard nothing. What you call him?
It'd be nice if he'd just come in. We could talk to him.
That would be
if
great.
you're talking to him, suggest a little better communication with us before an enforcement order
Either
really
that, or
has
I
to.
can give him a call and say, look, Mr. Milligan, I'd be more than happy to do the project for you to the satisfaction of you and the Commission and the Wetland Protection Act and Stormwater Management. But, until you sign the second proposal, and more importantly, pay me for the first.
Exactly.
We were just hoping to have this resolved by spring, so it could be seeded and up and done and stabilized.
It's his
and-
advantage to
Yeah,
do that,
I mean
but as the saying goes, no tiki, no laundry.
That's my dad's saying.
I thank the Commission for its time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
Let's see, John, can I get a copy of
Yes,
your...
I'll email it to you.
help with that? All right.
Well, yeah, I know you can't communicate well, but maybe you can.
On our agenda, we have other Pearl Road Homeowners Association discussions.
Yes.
There he is.
The if you recall, the developer proposed the Pearl Road development as a homeowners association private road.
Which one's this?
This is Pearl Road, item number 5. That the reason why it was being developed that way is because they had their own common septic system. They had their own sewer lines in the street, which no other town road in West Bridgewater has, or maybe it's up near Brockton Line might have some, but the general roadways in West Bridgewater don't have it because everybody has an on-site private septic system. And the planning board approved it that way. We were told the same thing when the commission was presented the project. And recently, we found out that the homeowners want to have the street accepted because school buses won't go down a private road. And so the kids have to either walk all the way up or the parents drive them up to Walnut Street and they have to wait for the bus up there. Whereas if it was a town road, the buses would come down and pick the kids up, like every other town road in the town.
How long is that road,
I
John?
was just gonna say that. How many houses in it?
About 1,500 feet.
So it's well less than the mile requirement to walk to a school, or the 2-mile requirement if you're a high school student.
And how many houses?
Is there
20.
room at the bottom of the Pearl Road for
My
bus
kids
to
had to
turn
walk from our
around?
house
Yes.
all the way to high school.
28.
They'll get a ride.
28, I believe, somewhere around 28 houses.
2 miles
You
uphill.
think maybe,
Yeah,
well, I'm not
it was
trying to
miles.
say
I remember
anything,
that.
you can put something up at the end of the road
Or drive.
and have the kids walk up there, or have the, shuttle them up there, the parents, to have them to sit in the weather, like a little school,
Like a little
places.
bus stop.
Yeah,
thing.
bus stop thing.
Well, apparently,
But they want to change the whole road, the whole thing, so now it can be plowed. I'm sure they didn't want that. Now they,
I mean, again,
It comes-
buyer beware. This was up front.
It's a lot of houses, though.
the
Eight
plan, but
houses.
Agreed.
this is the complication. The planning board had a public hearing, and they decided to allow or recommend at the annual town meeting to have the town accept it as a street. So what the concern is here, that if we do accept, the town accepts a street, then the town's going to be responsible for the stormwater management of the subdivision.
I just blow the
And-
whole thing right there.
We didn't approve it that way. I mean, we might have added in,
Right.
as an
Good
example,
point. Yeah.
we asked them to put some rain gardens in, but it was very informal. We just said, do the best you can by putting some rain gardens in.
Is that the one that the planning board didn't want the rain gardens?
No.
Because they don't want the maintenance
No,
on it?
that was
Oh.
Lucas States.
So wouldn't that be able to enough to have to stop from changing?
But
Not to be in a bad way, but I mean, from us approving it.
Well,
for
what I
certain
did,
way?
I met with the president of the homeowners association along with the chairman of the planning board, and the homeowners association president said that they would agree to maintain not only the sewer lines and the sewer system, but the stormwater system.
And they can plow their own road through.
No, and then the town would plow the road and
Maintain it and resurface it. And
So if it's not if it's a private way, do we have less control of the stormwater management, or does that? Or
So if it was a private way, for example, all the drainage would go to the detention basin at the very low end of the project. And our responsibility under the stormwater permit that the federal government just issued us would be to test the water coming out of the detention basin. If it became a town road, we'd be concerned about what's getting into each one of the basins, and what's happening in the basin itself, and what's being discharged at the low end. So if they sign that stormwater agreement to take care of the roadway and not the roadway, but the drainage in the roadway, we're back to just testing the water as it comes out of the basin. So there's a lot less stormwater effort and person power, to take care of versus the whole.
So how
street.
do we know if that's being done correctly? If the association is doing it?
So let's say we test it on a regular basis at the outlet of the detention basin, and all of a sudden there's a spike in the quality of the water.
Okay.
Maybe there's a lot of suspended solids in it. Maybe there's a lot of phosphates, organics coming through from pet waste, that kind of thing. Then we can go to the homeowners association and ask them to police their owners in the subdivision and stop doing certain things like dumping pet waste into a catch basin. I mean, we can do that if it's a town road, but
Right.
it means that we got to have people out there enforcing it, whereas all we have to do is test it periodically, and if it's not doing well, then we can have them address it. Otherwise, we're out there doing a lot of extra work under stormwater, and I'm trying to not see the town have to have a highway department that's just for stormwater.
Who does the testing, John?
The town does the testing, screen testing,
I mean, who samples the water, for
So
instance?
say under the current situation, we feel that there's a need to look at a certain outfall that's coming from the town drainage system. We can take a very simple kit, and it could be one of the DPW workers, it could be me, it could be one of the commission members. And it's not a laboratory test, but it's like checking your pool. You come up with a color, and it means that there's a problem, it needs to be addressed. Then we can go in and take a sample, have it go to a lab and say, there's actually a septic system effluent getting in this water, and they would test it for that. And of course it would cost, but the basic screening would eliminate a lot of the need to take things right to a lab and spend money. It could be something as simple as on the idea of a
Like a lab stick.
yes,
System.
litmus paper.
Right.
You know, is it real pH? What is the pH? I mean, is it real high or low? And then we know that there's something happening.
And this meets the new stormwater requirements?
Yes.
This particular,
So they did say that the president did say that he would be willing to do that. So they're having a meeting on it tomorrow night at the selectman's office. So I mean the selectman's meeting room. So I wanted the commission to be aware of it so that if you hear about those things, you're not blindsided. It's not that you can't vote your own conscience at the annual town meeting. I mean, if you don't agree with it, then vote the way you want. But I didn't want anybody to say you didn't know about it. And so that's how we're trying to patch up this situation where the planning board is going to recommend. And then there's other regulatory people like yourself that heard differently, that it's a private road and why should the town accept it. The difference now is that they're going to be responsible for the whole street drain system and the street sewer system and the septic system and the open space. They're still responsible
So
for
there's
that.
no complaints about anything other than they
School
just don't
bus.
want their kids to walk to the end.
Right.
Can you say,
We got everything all under control with everything
Maintain-
other than just that, and then the people, they're not thinking, right, what's going to happen in the long run?
when you say maintain the system, like it's very similar to where we are, where I live. I don't know if there's anything written on what you need to do to maintain the system. You know, what,
at the,
Because
you mean
yours
the
is a
home
private way.
association?
I mean, I've never seen anything written saying every 6 months or every year you need to do this or do that. I don't think we've ever done anything, to be honest with you.
So when this starts kicking in, the stormwater management
Right,
for the
right.
town kicks
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
they'll be testing at the outfall of your stormwater basin. And if it appears that there's a lot of sediments in the water that's coming out, then we know the catch basins haven't been cleaned, and they should be.
Yeah.
Maybe the vegetation needs to be trimmed in the basin itself, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But what you're basically saying at this point is that if you did nothing and it's working pretty good, and if we test it and find out there's nothing major about it, then
You have to kind of wait for the rain to get the outfall.
right. And that's what you do. You test it during wet weather
Yeah,
and then in
yeah.
dry weather.
I would imagine the system degrades somewhat over the years. I mean, silt gets in there and all kinds of stuff.
However, if you think about how big that basin is in your development,
Yeah.
and all that effluent coming out of the storm drains gets into that big vegetative area,
Yeah.
and by the time it gets through to the far end,
Yeah. It's pretty
it's
long.
probably pretty good. And so you haven't done too much over the years? and it's still doing pretty good.
Yeah.
That shows you the
Design was-
the way the design is made is to be kind of foolproof. You know that you don't have to be constantly tweaking it and doing things to it.
Sure.
To accept this, do they have to do a new easement with the association?
For the what?
For the acceptance of the road and come up with agreement to manage the stormwater and septic?
Right now, the homeowners were conveyed the street, the septic system, and the open space. So they all own their own lots,
Right.
but the homeowners association was conveyed by the developer, the open space, the street, and the drain system. So they would then have a deed that would convey that to the town with stipulations that they were to maintain the sewer and the drainage.
I'm just wondering if they have to go back and redo a record at the county registry of
Oh,
deeds.
yes, oh, yes.
Is this when we try to fix what the developer didn't do with the easement that we were supposed to have, with the restrictions, when we had the clear cutting in the lot and found out that it wasn't recorded properly? Can we fix that now? If they have to go back in and re-record it, they're asking something for us, can we ask something from them?
Speaking
And say, hey, this was
From
supposed
the
to be...
association, or? you
Right,
know,
well, I mean,
from
it's the
the-
association.
No, I think it's too late because now that I'm thinking about it, the conservation easement was on individual lots, and each one of those were conveyed by the developer to those individual people. And then they had mortgages, which now you have to
Right,
get the
go
bank
onto
to
each one of
agree or
those.
the
Okay. I
lending.
wasn't quite sure how,
Wasn't part of the whole,
right,
Yeah, so
it was by lot, not by,
not by the whole
right,
development.
not by the developer.
yeah. Good try, but I think thinking it through is it's beyond where that could happen, and to get 20 some odd lending
You
institutions.
want a town road?
Well, we've talked about it, and the reason
Precedent's being set.
we don't is the plowing to be done, but then the driveways get plowed in. The way it's set up now, they handle the driveways and
The walkways, the
the
driveways.
walkways, so you never plowed in, so to speak. So that's the only.
But you're also 55 and older.
Yeah.
Older. It's not. The kids should be able
I mean,
to
it
show
costs a
the
lot.
driveways.
Snow,
Oh, yeah.
and although it would save a lot of money, again, the plow comes through and you get this
Yeah.
mound, and people say, I don't want to deal with that.
So that was an update on that, just so that no one's blindsided in, and it will be discussed at the selectmen's meeting on Wednesday night. And I believe the planning board may discuss it again the same night. So I just want everybody to be aware of it.
So
And
it-
we'll still continue to work with them to agree to the drainage agreement, but it's got to be also approved by their homeowners association.
Yeah.
So,
So it does have a little cul-de-sac in the end for the bus to,
yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
It is it's a
according
pretty big
to
street.
Hugh Hurley, the chairman, he mentioned that the road was constructed to all the standards. It's not like the 40B over on Scotland Street where they had a reduced width, reduced layouts, those kind of things. So it was hard to argue not to recommend acceptance to the street because it's built up
Yeah.
to standards. It's just that
Look what you get.
it wasn't presented that way.
Right, it's like after the fact.
Yeah. So I believe if it was a substandard road, the planning board would not have recommended it to town meeting.
So the only real new cost incurred is for a plow to swing through there,
So
right?
it's
Yeah,
like right
and-
behind 24.
It adds to the chapter
90 money for road
for-
upkeep and repairs.
that the state gives you for maintenance, so it'll add to that.
So it does
amount.
benefit the town? or-
Just means one more
Yeah,
road
okay.
we have to
Well,
pay.
It should. I mean, I don't know
Well,
exactly
yeah.
what the numbers are, but
That's, I'd be interested what the cost is to incur to do that, but
You know, screwed by all.
I'm totally lost. I don't
Do you have anything to add, or are you here for something else?
Well, I was here for something else, but I am curious if they got approval from the bus company that they'll even take the time to drive up the street.
I know, a lot of times they
They don't
don't.
have so much time to pick up the kids, right?
A lot. You see a lot of
It's
kids at
another
the end of
issue,
the
I
street.
guess, right?
I see
Yeah.
a bunch
Meet
of
you at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
families just bringing the kids and
Right.
sitting in the car.
Right.
Yeah, you have to meet it at the next
They do,
intersection
even
of two
up-
streets.
Right,
and-
over in Copperhead and all those little ones.
It's not like they meet up anyways now at
Yeah.
a big bunch.
Right.
They go from house to house to house to house.
Yeah.
They stop and
Yeah.
go, stop and go, stop
I
and
know,
go.
then behind them.
It's crazy.
Not like the old days.
I just wish I
Well, they had to walk to
placing the
school.
brakes on.
From under the house, from under the power lines.
Thank you for the update, John.
I can remember as a kid,
Uh-oh.
the bus would go by and I'm running
Yeah.
because we all met at one spot in
Yeah.
the center.
And it's funny because if you weren't there, the bus would take off.
It
and
would.
Then what
And
happened?
that's why I ran, because I was always
And you hope somebody else was running too, and they were just a little
Now they-
slower.
Yeah, and
Now they
yeah.
toot outside the house.
Now if they don't stop and they just keep on going, they get yelled at for doing it. They didn't stop at the house.
so.
I
did-
will ask, so we don't keep you here forever. What are you here for, or what are you here for?
I am here, Steve Currier, 125 Bruce Place. I'm here because I am looking at buying a piece of land in Luke Estates. And I wanted to touch base with the board, because I know it still has some things that need to be approved, so we're looking out maybe into June or so. But I wanted to get an understanding of what
That's
the board
smart,
is
though,
looking
right?
at doing as far as barrier
The restrictions.
on the 50-foot buffer, and also, the lots are tight, which is fine once I'm on it. But you've got to build a home on it too. And I'm trying to figure out what size home I can build there. And
It all depends how much yard you want with that house.
well, I'm not so worried about.
That's what it's coming down to on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about the yard, because the yard and what's there is fine. And I'm downsizing. I want less yard, so having the wetlands and all that, that's great by me, because I'm looking for less to mow and all that, so that's good. Just my concern is that, okay, so when we put the house there, in that 100-foot square that we have, well, half of it is the 50-foot buffer zone.
That's right.
Which that will stay the buffer zone.
Right. And I'm not gonna, I'm not looking to build in
Right.
it at all. But when I build, if equipment were to be in that buffer zone, and not to change the buffer zone, but, if a loader or something needed to get in there to do something, I've lived there for almost 18, almost 20 years now. And so I know the paths, I know all of it, and someone's been cut the, and it grows right back. If you don't touch it, it's not a problem. So, I believe honestly that, okay, if we were to do that, and then just, okay, leave it alone, it's coming back, that would be fine, but I'm not the type of guy to go do it and come ask for forgiveness. I want to be up front. And
We appreciate
We
that.
appreciate
yes,
that.
we do.
Yeah,
We're
so-
glad you're here asking.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to come have that conversation, and so that's one of my concerns is, okay, are we going to be able to at least get close enough? Because I think the layout that I've got now is going to bring me within 7 feet of that buffer zone, so I'm not coming right up against it, but still 7 feet. You could be going 5, 10 feet into that working construction. It wouldn't be going all the way into the 50, but you'd be on it, and hey, the line's the line.
Right.
So I wanted to bring that up, and then also there was, there's talk about a fence, and what type of fence, and my question with that is that so the wetlands, things it could be out there playing catch with a grandson or something, and a ball goes in there. Well, I still have a right to walk in there, right? I just can't disrupt it or anything.
Right.
So, would a gate be put in, things like that? What type of fence would it be that I'd be looking at? You know, so those are the things I'm curious about, because I haven't made any final deals yet, too, you know, so,
Don't there be markers too?
Well,
PVC markers?
That's only
What we usually do for the order of conditions is where it's really tight, we require the erosion control barrier to be put in right along the 50-foot buffer and the markers right along that erosion control barrier right at the start before they even do construction. And that conservation easement's already been recorded at the registry, which says that you can walk in there, or you could go in and collect some deadfall or trash, exactly. But you can't go in and cut down trees and clear the underbrush. And so walking in it, enjoying the wetland walk through, kids hitting a baseball into it and going to retrieve it, that's all acceptable. But because of this particular one, with the amount of fill, the commission had noticed that most of the steep slopes go right down to the 50-foot buffer. And you had mentioned something about putting up something more substantial as a barrier. Comments were made about chain link fence. Nothing's been officially talked about because all of those individual lot plans have not been approved, although I guess they're coming in on the 7th. So we'll be talking more specifically about it. But I suggested that he talk to you to see if you wanted a chain link fence or you wanted some other type of fencing that was a little less.
I think a post and rail is
Well,
a nice look.
I think considering who you are and what you're thinking, that you're not gonna, you've come in and asked about how to go about doing this. You're not gonna be the one that
Digs out the muck.
is gonna go out there, even if you put up like a little, just a regular fence.
Right.
You know, you don't have to put out like a plastic so you can't
Right.
see out there. But yeah, like
Just
you're
in
not
a
gonna go out there and
natural-
do something and
Yeah.
come back in and say, "Oh man, I forgot. Oh, can you please forgive me?"
Yeah.
Somebody who might not come in front of us and do that might do that. So I mean, you can put up, as far as I'm concerned, put up whatever kind of fence you want. But you know, at least we know right now. I think you're not going to go out and do anything that's going to
I think his
cause
concern,
problems.
I
But
think
if
his
you do
concern
for
was the
one, you gotta-
contractors. Are they
it's
going to
gotta
put
be
up the
for
fence?
all.
No.
I mean, are we going to require the contractors to
Oh,
put up
no.
some form of fencing? Weren't we talking about that?
Mhm.
Because 7 feet from the wetlands is pretty close.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
yeah.
And it's got the runoff, but fences aren't going to stop that. It's just going to stop, make people think you can't go march in there and cut down trees and, do whatever you want. So I think we did talk about that with the
We
with
did.
the-
So you could have a order of conditions that would allow reasonable amount of work to be done in and around the 50-foot buffer, and quite often you'll see some excavator might have run over the silt fence, so they have to go and put it back in. A lot of damage hasn't been done other than re-erecting the silt fence. Then there's other times where they've actually destroyed some of the wetlands buffer by going in there and turning around and so forth. So we kind of have to deal with that as a case-by-case
Right.
basis. But the way the conditions might be worded is that after the construction on those tight lots, you put up some type of post and rail fence or some type of barrier so that everybody knows that that's a protected area afterwards.
Like if we have more educated buyers too,
Plus,
that
we can still put in the markets.
Yep,
Right.
Yep.
Which they'll
Right.
definitely be there to show that this
There is a
no-
protected
there's
area.
a protected area. This is how far you're supposed to.
And a lot of times it's lot by lot. I mean, we've
Right.
had them come in that have justified why they need to go into that 50-foot to do the construction work. And if they can explain it and say that logistically to do what we need to do, we need a waiver or need to be granted in as long as we're restoring it and putting it back and not doing amount of damage, or we're going in there just walking and doing handwork and not machine work. But again, it's site by site, so depending which lot you're looking at and what you're trying to do with it.
And after it's done, you're just done. No more going in there.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't even know if they'll have to. I mean, I know right now there's 7 feet there, and there's gonna be no fill or slope that close to that border. I mean, the lot that I have is probably the biggest lot that they have in there, but it's got a lot of the wetlands in it as well. But there really aren't going to, there's really not going to be an area, except maybe in the back right, where the slope would get closer to that 50-foot buffer zone. But even then, you know, if we're looking at the slope, you know, and we're worried about the runoff, the fence isn't going to change that.
Right. Right, the fence is just,
Really, the goal would be to keep the slope as far away from the
Yeah.
wetlands as you can.
right, right.
And then in the back as well, the Quake Farm is right behind it. There's actually a path that goes right through there where when they hay the field. So there's a gate and there's a path that goes right through there as well. So, and he happens to be a friend of mine, so, but I've walked through there and that would be about it, so. You're not gonna hold that against me that Paul's a friend of mine.
We might get you for go walking through the.
Well, I wanted to just check here, see if there was anything that I should.
Always
be
wise,
concerned
you know
about.
that, Steve.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd rather, you know, upfront, I don't like surprises, and I know that sitting on boards myself.
And like I
That's
always
right,
tell
we know.
everybody, is just buyer beware.
Yeah.
Beware what you buy. Crazy.
Exactly, because I, some of the other lots, they're tight,
Yeah.
they're tight to the wetlands.
And what we're fighting is a lot of people are buying those tight lots and putting the house, and then all of a sudden they want
A pool.
the pool or bigger yard for the kids to
Bigger
play in,
yard.
and all of a sudden they've just gone right into everything, and that's why we're looking.
We
We don't want to
have a
put fences
whole
up
bunch of
everywhere.
them
We
all
actually
at
prefer
once.
not to. But the markers and the designated areas in a lot of these subdivisions, they're just not paying attention.
Plus,
to.
people don't realize what wetlands mean. They don't mean to, you know, they think, I bought this land, it's my land, I get to do whatever I want with it, not realizing, you know, if you don't know where to look, you can't find what you're looking for, you know, it's just, it's hard for people to figure that out.
So we hope that the sign makes someone stop and say, what's this all about? And then come to us to ask, you know, during the workday, what does this all mean? And we can explain it to them before they buy the property. And that way they are being educated as to what they can and can't do with it. And then they can decide whether, do I want to buy this or not? You
Unless you
know?
put a
It's
skull
almost like a
across
no
it,
trespass-
do
no
not
trespassing
enter
sign.
danger.
I mean, some people go on somebody else's property. What are you doing on it?
Mind
You see the
area,
sign? Well, yeah, but
beware
well, now you're in trouble.
landmines.
well, what do you
This
mean?
would be a good time to explain
Just
our,
like it's crazy.
acreage, you know, for
Yeah.
what kind of site, you know, lots we want to have to
Definitely.
keep everyone out of the wetlands. Just having that,
And that's gonna be a homeowner's thing
Right.
too. So
Yeah, now, is that gonna be a private or public street, you know?
Luke Estates is supposed to be public.
yeah, but it's gonna be controlled with homeowners.
Homeowners are going to have to do the vegetation management and also
Right.
take care of the, what do you call them, bioretention basin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the ones that are in there are actually the more the grassy.
Yeah.
Divided, yeah.
So there has been some comment about changing the signs that we have, which say protected wetland area, to danger tick zone.
I think spider breeding area.
Danger
They
landmines.
have to put that right on the board.
I've never seen that before.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize they
Oh, then,
used
yeah, if you did that, now it'd be like, oh, are you
Yeah.
threatening me? Like,
that was,
I
that
have
was
lots of things that I get, but I don't know how many people want.
So did I
I
have,
do.
Yeah, no, that was great, thank you. And if anyone has any recommendations or suggestions of things I should be looking at beyond that, I appreciate it. And I already did check, we do have room for the pool.
I thought you would downsize it.
I am, it's gonna be a small pool.
He's putting the lap pool in only.
Yeah.
Trust me, that's Mama's sanity, so we wanna keep Mama
you
sane.
don't want a hot tub? Take it in the ground, big hot tub.
There you go, so, well, thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully we
See you, Steve.
Okay, take care.
see you later.
This one of those invoices that came through differently because it's from Ed Sorrow.
Yeah,
Just
I
sign
noticed
the other-
that. Yeah,
just sign the other,
the other columns along
if
the
you
side.
can. Yes, good.
So I had fully intended to come down with the case in the Chromebook for Paula, but then I realized it hasn't even been set up with an email account yet or anything, so.
You
I'll
can
get
have
that-
it, but it can't do any work.
So
Okay.
I'll get it taken care of for you, and then,
Thank you, John.
and then you can either come by and pick it up, or I'll give it to you at the next meeting.
Yeah, someplace in there.
Okay, so we really don't need. We already voted for the order conditions, we're just doing the signing. We
Yeah.
signed the bills, and we just have basically the
A
follow-up
couple more.
discussion on the administrative
Thoughts?
delineation fee going up, and it looks like the bylaw study committee, we got our proposal in.
Yeah, we've got our
Nice.
proposal into every
Job, John.
place that we needed to get it into, and tomorrow night, the planning board's going to discuss it, the bylaw study committee's going to discuss it, and hopefully they'll recommend it, and
Nice.
we've got our reserved spot on the town meeting warrant.
Awesome.
So the idea is to just lay this in on the plan?
Yes, and
And
if you
see how
can't,
it-
if you can't put that in on the plan, then you have to change the lot line. So it's going to be a tool that the engineers will use.
So you've got the 100-foot
That's awesome.
square, but you
Yeah.
gotta put
Yeah.
that outside of the 50, because you're jockeying it.
Right.
So if you have to,
So if they have to shorten the road up a little bit to get that last
Gotcha.
lot to fit, they'll shorten up the road, or if they end up finding that that last lot can't be made, they'll split that land up to the other owners, and,
Do you think they'll go right to the 50 with the edge of it?
oh yeah,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, the bylaw committee is new, right?
Yes.
Having new people.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that's meeting tomorrow?
tomorrow night. I think it's in this room, and then the planning board comes right in afterwards.
Delineations, too?
What is your feeling? Do we need somebody there? Do we need to speak to this? Do we? I'd like to go, but unfortunately, I'm not going to make it.
No.
So.
Pardon me.
I think the planning board meeting itself would be probably the most important, because the bylaw study committee only recommends.
Yeah.
They can only recommend one way or another, and they've got two things to discuss. One is a windmill bylaw,
Mhm.
and the one that we're proposing. And so I think that'll be real rapid, and then I think it's the planning board hearing, but they've got other business to do, so it could be a long evening.
Yeah.
So I can go and I'm planning to be there to represent the commission,
Okay.
so I will explain to them that that's what everybody wanted, and so
I mean, it's only helping them and us,
Right.
really, in the long
Right.
run.
everybody, actually,
Yeah.
the residents,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Engineers,
regulatory boards, the building
developers,
inspector.
everybody. I mean, it's just makes our lives. We don't have to say no what we're thinking as much.
Like
and-
move it.
Yeah. Okay. And
Lee likes to say move it, though. He might be sad. Can't you make it smaller?
As long as it gets done.
in the discussion for our delineation fee, putting that, we have to advertise that one?
I can have it in
Oh.
time for the next meeting. It will be in on the Monday, the 25th, or the 24th, whatever that Monday is.
You have to be able to adjust it to what we want, or
Well, what your thing was adding $1 to
Yeah.
it and putting it into a
Dedicated.
designated,
Yes.
dedicated fund.
yeah. Yep.
We're still inclined for that,
Oh, yeah.
and I
Oh,
will
yeah. I think that's
Definitely.
great.
entertain a motion to advertise for the change in
I'll make that
delineation
motion.
fee.
I'll
Second.
second.
Move and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Advertise and put that on the agenda. I think that was it.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything else? Kitty did have, there's some correspondence that I will pass if anybody wants it. A Mass Woods Update Conference coming, put on by UMass Amherst. Anybody's interested? The MAC has their monthly Lunch and Learn series, which is, this one's on vernal pools and ecology, if anybody's interested on that one. And MAC has a online survey
which April 18th is the deadline for completing the survey.
It's an important thing, because that's about the Article 97 and tightening it so that unscrupulous people can't talk the legislature into allowing things built where people thought it was permanently protected.
So there's that here, and there is a link. I know I got a copy.
I'll send it to everybody if you would like.
Yeah.
Yeah, send it out to
All right,
everybody, and then we
please,
can.
I'll do
Yeah,
that.
thanks, Katie.
I've actually done that one already. So other than that, I don't have anything. Anybody else?
Just one quick update. Mo's community project of cutting down trees went smooth as could be. They did not. They did everything from the street with cranes or right next to the street. So I did an inspection, and that was a great job.
Those trees look pretty good, though. Was it the root system?
It was just the fact that they were close to the buildings, and if they went over during the rainy periods where the ground is so wet.
What was this?
You get them to leaf out, and all of a sudden you get a heavy snowstorm after they
I
leave,
know,
and the
I
wind
mean,
comes,
I
and they're
s-
gonna.
I thought about it. I mean, I wasn't involved in any of that at all, but I thought about it. I said, gee, those are nice trees.
What was this?
Nice hickory tree
Over at
they took down. and-
Captain Carlson's Way.
but there's a
yeah.
few
Yeah.
further in, too. If those come down, it's going to be just as damaging. But
No, is it next to your house?
hmm?
Is it next to your house?
No.
No wonder.
Those guys are amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
they
crazy.
did
They
it.
They
are
do.
amazing
Yeah.
watching them work, like a ballet.
Yeah.
So compliments to the organizers in your development.
Oh, good, thank you. Did you walk around?
Yes,
You walk around?
and
Yeah.
what
They
was
just-
with? Was it two cars in the cul-de-sac that looked like they'd been there all winter? There was a lot of debris that looked like the snowplows may have kicked up.
They push it down and they pile the snow there. All
Oh, and so the cars just parked on that spot then?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
they weren't there all winter.
Oh no, no.
Okay.
Believe me, they wouldn't be there 10 minutes.
Okay. I got a few looks like, what are you doing here?
We have police there.
Mo would have a gun.
We have a campus system. Why I don't know.
Yeah.
Good.
Jeez.
Hey, got to be careful.
Yeah.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.